Maybe I have to give up my second job as honorary mayor of Winston-Salem and actually take over as the chairman of the Federal Reserve Bank. Just for a little bit. But Jerome, it's not my job to fix the housing market. Powell just had a press conference after their meeting yesterday where some really interesting facts came up. You see, the market and many people were expecting them to cut rates, as they've hinted at during this meeting. Instead, they announced that they were not cutting rates. They weren't raising them, they're keeping them the same, and here's kind of how the market reacted to that. They did say basically they're done raising them, but they're not ready to start cutting them just yet, and then went through some of the reasons why. And without getting too much into the weeds on all of this stuff, my biggest pet peeve of when they're talking about inflation and when they're going through some of these numbers, especially as it relates to housing, they always look at lagging data, meaning data that's from the past. They don't do that with all the other metrics that they're looking for, but they do with housing. When they look at rents, it's based off of the last year, so that data could be 6 or 12 months old. And a similar story when they look at new construction starts. A lot of things have to happen before construction starts. So again, that is not a great indicator of what's going on in the housing market at that time, but especially when there's current data available. I mean, you can look at Zillow or Redfin and see what rents are. There are a lot of different sources when you don't have to look at such lagging data when it comes to housing, which is a huge chunk of inflation. And that's why it irks me so much, because the housing piece is a big part of the inflation equation. And if you took out that part for housing, or if you looked at more real-time numbers, I think you would get a different picture of what inflation is right now, and I think that would warrant them beginning cutting rates. My big fear with this is that it's just too big of a thing, going too slow, and they're looking at data from the past, and if they don't start, they could cause more harm than good, especially when it comes to the housing market. I first started talking about this in October of 2022 in this video that I did. So I've been on this kick for a little while, and the thought was at that time, if they raise rates, that would crush demand and cause prices to come down. Well, I'm no economist, but common sense kind of told me, if you keep raising rates, that's going to make all these people that bought homes for the last few years with really, really low rates or even marginally low rates, they're going to hold on to those houses. They're not going to sell them. That's going to put a lot of pressure on the supply side, which is actually going to cause prices to go up, or at best stay flat, but cause them to go up. And while I do like being right, I really wish I was wrong about that one, because that's what we've seen since I made that video in October of 2022. Prices haven't gone crazy, but they have gone up in the last year plus. And supply has remained constricted during that time for some of the reasons that I said, some outside reasons as well, but supply has remained constricted. Jerome Powell was asked by a reporter about members of Congress asking him to lower rates to make housing more affordable. And I'm paraphrasing here. Here's that video if you want to go look that up. But he basically said, hey, it's not my job to fix housing. Making housing more affordable is not what I'm here to do. He said he was tasked to get inflation to 2% while maintaining as many jobs as possible. He also said his only tool basically to do that is through interest rates, so that's why they had to raise them. That's why they're not dropping them right now. And yes, while housing affordability is not his job, that is a huge part of the economy, and interest rates have had a huge impact on the housing market. So I don't know, do we blame him, Congress, a little bit of everybody, but it would be nice to see something start to happen in this regard. I personally thought they should have stopped raising rates a while ago, and they should really start to look at cutting them. I would love to see that happen, but I just had this weird feeling when I started to see activity pick up, and we're going to go over the numbers in just a second, but when I started to see activity pick up in mid-January, which is a little bit early for spring market, I was worried that there's still a lot of demand out there and we're not going to see those rate cuts come right now. And now, based on what the markets are saying, and I've done a bunch of reading of other articles, many people are now thinking that the cuts will be in likely March, possibly May this year is when they'll start. But that's the big national news of the day. Let's get into the data over drama market update for the triad for Winston-Salem, Greensboro, and High Point. I'm Jeff Valentino. My job is helping people buy and sell real estate. All my contact information is below, including a link to my Google reviews and a relocation guide if you're coming to the area. So we have the first set of numbers in for 2024. Let's take a look first at all the overall numbers. We're going to first see that total sales and pending sales dropped again, another big drop in those numbers, down to about 1,000 each. This is near 10-year lows. There are just not a lot of closings happening right now in the real estate market. Again, on the overall numbers, the average sales price throughout the triad, remember this is Winston-Salem, Greensboro, High Point, and the surrounding areas. But average sales price jumped this last month to about $320,000. Again, this is right near the all-time high that we just hit a few months ago. Also remember, I'm not a huge fan of this number, A lot of people like to use this for clickbait if prices are going up or down. It's not an exact indicator of, this house this time would cost this much more versus last month. It's not exactly a good indicator of that, but it is a good indicator of the trend of the overall market. So I do like to highlight it. All right, let's take a look at now the supply and demand numbers. We're going to start with the supply numbers first, where we're going to see total homes for sale went up to about 3,600, which was a nice jump. And obviously, seeing more homes for sale is good news. It's good news for the overall health of the market. It's great news if you're looking to buy, especially when we've been talking about so little inventory for so long. It's always good to see this number come up. So not where we need to be, but that is going in the right direction, which is good to see, especially with, so many barriers to keeping people from listing their home right now. So just to see more new listings come on the market is overall a really good sign. And the month supply of homes came in at 2.2. Now remember, on this number, 6 months is considered balanced, but we really need that number to be about 4 months or more to start seeing meaningful price reductions. So when we're at 2.2 months, it still overall favors sellers pretty strongly in this type of market. And the last supply number we're going to look at is going to be new listings. We did see a healthy jump of new listings this past month. We had almost 1,800 new listings, which was a nice jump. Remember back through the fall, we had that range where they bounced around when normally they decline throughout the year. We had that range last fall, and then they did come down seasonally through the winter, but it was nice to see such a healthy jump this month. We're a little ahead of pace for new listings than we are in a more typical year. So again, encouraging to see of just more people having more inventory coming to the market. A big help from this, remember, is from new construction homes, where we're seeing more homes listed. Remember, new construction right now is about double what it typically is in this market. So there's a chunk of those coming from new construction, but still really good to see so many new listings come in market early in the year. Looking at the demand numbers now, percent of list price came in at 99.2. So we did see a dip in that. This is similar to what we saw exactly 1 year ago. This slightly steeper drop this year, but again, keep this in perspective. This came in at 99.2% of list price. There's not a ton of deals going on right now in the market. So that means if you had a house listed for $400,000, it probably sold for about $397. But it was nice still to break out of that 100% list to sales price ratio. Again, this is similar to what we saw last year. And if you look forward at last year, I think this year is going to be similar in that regard. We're going to bounce back up to about that 100% range. And then when the spring market fully kicks in, that might jump up a little bit over that. I don't know if we'll see the big jumps like we saw the last couple years, but I do anticipate that happening again this year just based on the early activity I'm seeing. And I know this is anecdotal again, but in the last 10 or 12 days, I've seen multiple houses go under contract in that first weekend with more than 2 or 3 offers. We're looking in the mostly $300,000 to $400,000 price range, but it's been in Winston-Salem, Greensboro, and High Point markets all throughout the triad. A couple homes that are in the higher price markets are doing the same, but there is generally a little bit more time in the higher price markets. And speaking of time, the median days on market came in at 19 days. And 19 days is a jump up from what we saw last month. But again, if you look back at the chart, similar time throughout the years, this is mostly a seasonal thing. So nothing really to see out of the ordinary there, except for the red box has the pandemic years in there where everything was just a little cuckoo. And no chart for this one, but I was looking at the average number of showings. They did jump up, which kind of matches what I was saying earlier with the increased activity in buyers. More people coming out to see more houses, so a little bit more action than typically this year. All of these things are pointing to the spring market coming a little bit sooner than expected. And I do think that is going to be the case this time, even though the Fed did not cut rates like they hinted that they might at this meeting. Keeping them the same is not going to deter anyone that's already thinking about jumping in the market from getting in. So I do think the spring is going to be busy. If you're thinking about selling, how many real estate agents would tell you this? But if you're thinking about selling, if you don't have to sell right now, wait about a month. Let that spring market really kick in. I think there's going to be plenty of demand for your house. So if you don't want to sell, you might consider waiting 4 to 6 weeks. If you're thinking about buying, get prepared. I do think the spring market is going to be competitive. Have your pre-approval, your team, and everything in place. But more importantly, if you're thinking about buying, start talking about strategy right now. As you're going out to look at homes, okay, what are we going to do? Where are the spots in an offer where I can give a little? Where's the spots in an offer where I don't want to? How can we make this offer stand out? Because I do think if you're looking for move-in ready homes in good areas around the median price point, you're going to have some competition. I was just at a house in Brookberry Farm this past week at the $1.1 million price range. That thing had 6 showings in 2-day span, which is really not typical this time of year and at that price point. Again, anecdotal, but I think the spring is going to be busy. So if you're buying, be prepared. If you're selling, take this time to get your house right, improve curb appeal, make some repairs. But most importantly, if you need help buying or selling real estate anywhere throughout the Triad, please reach out to me directly. I'd love to be a resource for you. You can do that at jeff@govalentino.com. Thanks.